Hello and welcome back to Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Ken McMillan, and if you're a fan of this show, you'll know we were gone for the past 2 weeks, and that is because I kind of comboed my birthday / 4th of July / going to a wedding as a vacation. So I took a 2-week vacation, but now we're back, and we are talking this week with Erik Koretz, the DP of a couple episodes of the final season of Ozark, which I know a lot of people are interested in how that show is shot. Very unique visual language there. Erik is another graduate of AFI. You know, we've had a lot of AFI members overall, but definitely recently, so we talk a little bit about that. He's actually teaching there again, so get into that. Obviously talk about how they shoot Ozark. You know, I was talking about having to shoot a night scene, and I had a 1200D, and he was like, oh yeah, with a 360, the RE360, we'd have that thing at like 0.25% because it was too bright at night. Lighting's crazy nowadays. Anyway, it's a great episode. You're going to love this one. Erik's rad, and you guys are rad too. So I will let you get to listening. So here, go ahead and enjoy my conversation with Erik Koretz. The way that we start every podcast is by asking how you got your creative juices flowing. Like, were you always a visual person growing up? Did you go to film school? Were you a woodworker first and then became a filmmaker? That seems to be pretty common.
I was born in the woods. No. Creative juices. Well, I mean, I always did art growing up. I was always the kid that instead of doing, the writing assignment, I would be the artist of the group and draw a picture or do some sort of artistic endeavor, mostly to get the fuck out of doing anything academic in any way.
Yeah.
And so I always did photography, and then I went to college, undergrad, for graphic design, and sort of it was the first time I went in and realized there was other people like me around. Like there was, I went to art school. I went to the art school at Syracuse University, and that sort of opened my eyes to be like, oh, I can do this just for a career and for life. And I don't have to worry about the academic parts that I don't give a shit about.
Right.
So I went for graphic design, but I always did sort of hybrid projects. So I would do graphic design, and then I would do shoot some things and animate over it. And I would do photography. But I always loved movies, and I knew that eventually I wanted to do something in film. At first, it was actually title design. I had seen Seven, and I saw how his name escapes me right now, and it shouldn't.
Sure, Konji.
No, the title designer. And I loved the mixture of graphic, film, video, and in the graphic motion graphics. And so I wanted
great song behind it too.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do and work in film somehow. And then I started doing sort of EPKs and music videos. And I moved to Los Angeles, and I had a graphic design company. I actually had one in college where I was doing global websites while I was in school. And then had moved to Los Angeles because I knew I wanted to be there. And started doing like EPKs and music videos and animation and all this sort of things. And then ultimately I realized I hated graphic design and as a living anyway. And then so I just started working on film sets, making my own movies, started PAing a lot, and just learning. And eventually I built a weird portfolio and applied to AFI for cinematography.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and not really knowing that everyone else there had years of cinematography experience. I was just like, fuck it, I want to learn the camera. And just gave them a portfolio of photos and weird shit that I had animated over and shot, and somehow got in. Stephen Lighthill was kind enough to put me in the class and saw something in some of my work somehow. And fell in love with cinematography once I was in school, and then that was it for me. I just became a cinematographer.
That's rad. We've had a handful of AFI students on this pod, or AFI graduates, I should say.
Yeah.
And that school does seem to, A, all y'all are good at your job, but B, I'm kind of interested in how they structure their classrooms, as opposed to the way that traditional colleges do. Because for film school, for me, it was very much, here's your assignment, you figure it out.
Right.
We weren't we weren't given very much structure to, like, here's your group, you're going to work with them for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for other schools, but AFI is very immersive. Your first year, you do not have a life outside of AFI. You're 7 days a week. You're either crewing on other people's projects, you're going to class, or you're working on your own. And so I think the best thing about AFI was, well, one, the other students that you're working with, which I'm still friends with most of them today, and you learn from them as you're working on set. But, weekly there's a class where someone from the field comes in and teaches you about lighting some aspect. And I actually just recently, the last few years, have been teaching that class myself. Like, I'll come in for once a year and just do a guest lighting seminar. And the theme of that is usually what not to do. You really just get a chance to hone your craft and try things. And there's always technical knowledge there with the professors, but you also get a chance to fuck up and try things on your own and see what works.
Right.
And it's very intense. And I think the intensity of and the pressure and sort of that learning environment really molds you. It's not for everyone, because it's everyone, there's a peer review group where they tell you your work sucks more often than not, and then you learn from that. And for me, that's the best. That's how I've always learned the best. But it's not for all people.
No, I definitely learned that way. Now I think about it going back, I'm like, I would have loved doing that. But I think at that age, at 18 to 21, I don't think I would have taken. I think it probably would have burned me out, because I loved doing stuff in college. Like, I ran the snowboard club.
Right.
I would.
Right.
I didn't have. Well, I did have time, I should say.
I think the difference is it's usually, there was no one that was in undergrad there, so it was a grad school. So
okay.
People, I think there's one student who was of the undergrad age, but like you come there after working a few years in the field, at the very least. So people are ready to kind of settle down and just focus on cinematography. So that's the main difference.
Gotcha. Yeah, because now I probably would have taken to it more. I did. I'm so glad you said that you're going back and teaching what not to do in lighting, because I try to make this podcast at least half educational, besides just being informative or entertaining. So if you wouldn't mind, what are some of the things that you should not do when lighting that you've been sort of talking about recently?
Honestly, what I talk about isn't really what not to do in lighting. It's what not to do in life.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And more about the negative experiences, or not necessarily the negative experiences, but the experiences that I've had that I felt I've fucked up on, or could have changed or done differently, or has sculpted me in my career, and just talk about that and have an open dialogue. Because when I was in class, there's a lot of DPs that are coming in which is great, telling awesome stories about how great they are and what they do. But I think, to me, I'm more beneficial when someone's open and honest about the mistakes that they made and how you can learn from them. And that opens up a bigger dialogue, because you can be honest about your experiences that way, as opposed to just pumping yourself up. We've all done dumb things or necessarily things that didn't work out, and the more you talk about them, other people can learn from them. So
trust me, I've shouted from the rooftops that failure is far more informative than doing a great job. And and even mistakes in life will inform, and everything hones you. Yeah. Even the non-artistic failures, whatever they may be, definitely make you more rigid when getting into, let's say, a film set, and people are acting annoying or whatever. You know, people are being, let's say, too green, maybe, and you can just take that in and go, all right, it's fine.
It helps to find your zen.
Yeah. Are there any? What do you find that? Because I don't really know what the audience of this podcast is yet, like demographically. So I'll just, as a sort of question for the younger people, the people who might be in college or grad school, like, what are you finding are today's problems? Like, what are, because when I was in film school, we were trying to solve for the mini DV camera, right? All the rest of that we were getting taught, but it was just like, we don't have 24p. Like, it was much more mechanical. Is it still, I wouldn't say we were gear focused at all, because there just wasn't, but we were always trying to add production value with like crane moves. I remember someone had a jib arm in our class, and oh my God, that thing got used. Every shot. So much used. Every shot was on the jib arm. But yeah, what's the current sort of generation up to, do you think? What are you finding interesting about them?
Well, I think there's the Instagram problem, really, where everyone seems to be doing incredible things all the time, nonstop. And I think a lot of that is realizing just to work at your own pace and, you know, figure things out, and you don't get sucked into that wormhole of like, you know, have to be on all the time and doing incredible shit. It's always a learning experience. I think right now, equipment is incredible right now. The pace that it's evolving and what's out there. I mean, you can shoot some incredible shit with a Sony FX3 or, and these small DSLRs that really get you beautiful production value. So and the lights are less expensive now too. Like all the prosumer, and which have basically become pro lights. I use a lot of, aperture lighting, rotolite, the stuff that had previously been prosumer stuff and is now, pro grade ready, and great CRI. So what that allows people to do is really just focus on learning lighting and what works, and you don't need the big tools to really make something beautiful. And everything's, you see a lot of gear focused people. A lot of people are very gear focused, but you don't really need much. Like it's just about your skill and what you studying, like some of the beautiful work that influences you, and trying to emulate that at first, and then making it your own. So, for example, in a class, I was showing how we light things in an Ozark way, which admittedly is, sometimes we use a lot of big gear for that, negatives, but showing to do that on a smaller scale, like instead of a 20 by overhead, just getting a 12 by and blocking out the sun, and then bringing your light underneath that. Like you don't have to do it on a large scale if you can adapt your shots to work that way. And then I'd show them an example of how other shows might light, which is just big bright light and lighting too much. So a lot of, if you look at Gordon Willis, it's a lot like hiding what the character's doing is a lot of the best lighting, as opposed to, just pounding the character with light because you got a big light to use and just brightening up the screen.
Well, and that going back to the idea of experience, like I just shot a spec ad, and Film Tools gave me a handful of aperture lights to use, and one of them was the 1200D. But this was great. A night shoot, and I was like, okay, great, we're going to be able to pound the street with light. I'm going to be able to light up this whole street, and we're shooting in the Arts District, so there's just tons of light everywhere. So that we had the 1200D on, dude. I think it was at 11% or like 7%, right? And that was just because like the atlases we were using too. The 40 is a flare magnet, so that was it was just too much. Yeah.
When we on Ozark, when we would put an Arri 360 on a condor in the sky for a nighttime scene, we were always under 1% with the light, and sometimes I'd ask, "Can you bring that down to 0.25%? It's too much light." And my gaffer Edison would be like, "It actually only goes to 0.5. I can't bring it down anymore." So you don't need much for a lot of situations.
It is funny how the difference between lit and not lit really is like almost no light. It's like a light bulb's worth dimmed down.
Yeah, I found that throughout my career, the further I get in my career, the less lights I use, or at least I try and use less. Sometimes I look up and I'm like, oh, how did 25 lights get into this little room? But most of the time, it's, can I just light through the window? You know, can this one bulb do this effectively and tell the story? And I like being minimal if I can. It doesn't always work out that way, though.
Well, so that actually brings up a good question, which is, how do you do that? How are you lighting with maybe just natural light or whatever, and not having it look unlit, like, you know, slapped together, let's say,
right?
And, you know, keep it looking professional.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. Well, lighting is really about the psychology behind the scene, right? So you want the lighting to inform the characters and reveal something about the story. So I always look at lighting a scene from that perspective. So if I'm going to a scene and you know, let's say it's Marty Bird's walking into a warehouse and he's expecting someone to kill him, you don't want to blast that with light. You want to have maybe like a couple par cans or practicals on that are in little pockets that he's walking in and out of shadows to really build that mystery. So there's no specific answer. It's always based off, okay, what is the scene? What is the intention of the scene? What are we trying to say? And how can we reveal more about the character with the lighting? I hate just being like, okay, let's light this room. Like, okay, well, what are we saying? It's always about telling the story and how you can tell the story better.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump back to Ozark in a second, but I did actually want to touch on you saying that you started in sort of EPKs and music videos.
Sure.
Because I personally, so were you mostly doing, or were you doing any like DVD special features type of work?
Yeah, I was doing. It had a weird mix because when I first started, it was still in my design company, so I was, we did a couple EPKs that became sort of music video sort of things, and then we would do stuff for DVDs back in the DVD days, and then we would always mix some design element into it too. But yeah, I never really fully shot. Like I never got into I know a lot of DPs came up fully shooting music videos, and I actually never really did that. It was more in the EPK design realm as opposed to shooting videos. Even after school, I started doing documentaries instead of music videos because that's sort of what I fell into.
The music video. Well, the reason I ask is because we've talked a lot on this podcast about how important the DVD special features era was. Right. Like Blu-rays still have special features, but they're often super polished and like they're more like press kits. They're not like how this got made. There's like a solid maybe 8 years of DVDs and whatever re-releases of older films that there's just like a guy with a VHS camera or whatever going around and you see people like arguing on set and shit. I can't remember. I think it's like Hellboy. So I remember watching one recently and I was like, first of all, the Hellboy 2 making of documentary is longer than the film.
Right, of course, because it takes longer to make the movie.
Yeah, and it's like I find that stuff fascinating, and that's dead now, and I'm very sad about it. But was that important to you? Were you a special features person? Before I ask the next question,
I was, because I always liked seeing how things were made. So if I saw something I loved, I really searched for it to find how the fuck they did it, because I wanted to know.
Because I mentioned this to a few DPs. I want to somehow convince some streamer or some investor, someone, to buy all the rights to the special features, and we make our own educational, I guess, streamer, just of special features. Right. Because I can't imagine that's an expensive, rights.
No, I mean, or the because it's part of the catalog, they might want companies might not want to separate that and let it go. But
fair.
But I mean, yeah, that would be amazing if there was one place where all the behind the scenes special feature was. That would be incredible.
Yeah, it's like Criterion and then whatever this is.
Yeah, I think you need to make that happen.
Okay, good. So every time I bring it up, everyone goes, hell yeah. So I'm like, I don't know who I'm going to talk to, but hopefully they're listening and can. Sometimes it'll be weird. Like people will be like, oh yeah, I heard your podcast. I'm like, you're the VP of Viacom. Why the fuck are you like?
Right.
But the second question I was going to ask was, the music video era is more or less dead. All the music videos that get made tend to be the artists themselves kind of making them. Do you see a current analog to sort of that era of not only output, but import and creativity?
Well, I mean, I think there's so much more is being made now because the tools are more readily available. So I'll wait for this.
Hold for plane.
So it's not necessarily one genre. Like if you look at Vimeo or YouTube, or it's just an explosion of content. Whether people, a lot of it's the action sports or street life or any of that sort of stuff. So you're seeing a lot more, and it's hard to curate and see what's what, to be honest. But I love how everyone's creating. I think it's incredible. When I first got out of school, that's when the 5D came out, and so
that's when I first got into school. Yeah,
right. So that for me, that was an incredible tool because I was like, oh, I can get cinema style shooting, shallow depth of field, and not use. Before that, I had been using these 3-chip, shitty cameras that didn't have much shallow depth of field, like very video, or film. That was really the only choice. So when the 5D came out, it was sort of groundbreaking. And since then, I've always just been on top of what tools are coming out, what's out, and how it can improve, what I do. I did a film called Dragon Slayer, which won South by Southwest, and that was a documentary about following a skateboarder around named Screech. And literally, we were supposed to shoot for a month, and we just ended up following around for a year. For none of us were getting paid. We just knew it was a great story, and it ended up working out. But the 5D let us do that and shoot it in a really cinematic way, in a way that documentaries really hadn't been before then. Not that I did it the first that way, but like that's the 5D allowed that to sort of tool for anyone to sort of make that happen. And so I love where everything is right now, where it's heading. It's phenomenal.
Well,
I buy a lot of equipment.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Even though I preach, it's not about the gear, but in some ways, you have to have something to shoot with. So,
well, that actually brings up something that has been said a lot by people of people saying all the time, like, oh, it's not about the gear, because we know it's not. But I feel like
it is,
you need to. Yeah, I think you have to get past sort of the day one, page one stuff.
Right.
Yeah, you have to get to the point where gear no longer excites you in the same way, and then it starts to matter.
Right.
Or something like that, because it's easy to get distracted. I mean, like you were saying, the 5D coming out, immediately everyone forgot in college. For me, everyone forgot about lighting and production design. I shouldn't say forgot, but like the attention to no one wanted to make their thing unless they could use the 5D, because we had like 4 DVXs and one 5D, and everyone was like, well, even the 7D, everyone was like, nah, it's useless.
Right. Yeah. You get on your gear bandwagons and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is, like you said, it is, and it isn't about the gear. You just, as long as the equipment is sort of giving you the tools that you can use the tools of cinematography to tell your story, depth of field, focal lengths, color science, like, and all of those are adequate. That's what matters.
Yeah. You had said something else that piqued my interest, and now I've forgotten it.
By the way, speaking of gear, if you can see, I'm taking apart a camera right now and putting it back together.
Is that what is that? Is that a red?
It's the Sigma FPL, and
Oh,
I bought this adapter to take this, make it a flip screen because it doesn't flip screen,
right.
and I totally fucked it up, and now it's my screen
That's
doesn't
it.
work. So
Oh, jeez.
that was what I was in the middle of before I was talking to you.
That's funny you bring that camera up because I went to Sigma Burbank for the release of that camera to write like a coverage article. And
Sure.
it fascinated me because it did seem cool and it just never took off. It's the world's tiniest full frame camera.
Right.
And as far as I could tell, the color science was pretty good.
It's great. Actually, what it is used for, and almost all the rental houses have it now, is as a director's finder. So, because you can change it's got a menu system where you can select like Sony Venice and 6K and the aspect ratio, and you can shoot, you can line up a shot, and it's exactly what the Venice sizing will be. So that's I use it for that a lot. It's great, and the color looks great.
I remember Matthew Duclos saying that because he was there, and he's a friend of mine too, but he was saying that he's going to make or was planning on making a whole viewfinder like handle and setup for
great.
the FP. But that was like 3 years ago, 4 years. So maybe he bailed on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it from him, but
sorry, for some reason my computer decided to throw a very loud notification at me. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, yeah, I said I haven't seen that from him, but tell him if he's going to make it, I'll buy it.
Fair enough. Apparently his dad like invented the first one,
the first viewfinder,
or like maybe the most popular one or something.
I'd have to ask him.
Yeah, but I'll let him know he's got at least one buyer. He's a huge tinkerer. Like I'm sure he could throw one together. He's got like 3 3D printers in his office just to.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, tell him to email me.
I will.
Or if he's listening right now.
He might be. He was on the podcast. We had a whole lens month. Lens month was great. I learned so much. Do you have the Cine Lens manual?
I'm getting it. I haven't purchased it yet, but I mean, those guys are geniuses. So
it's too good, and it's funny because it's like, we can poo-poo Instagram, but it is a way to see what other DPs are doing. And the week that came out, my feed was nonstop Cine Lens manual, and I was just like DMing Holben because he was on the podcast, and I was like, "Dude, this is like really taking off." And he's like, "I know, it's gonna be, he's gonna make millions." No, it's gonna be in like every DP's hand. Like it's sitting next to my ASC manual. I feel like they have to go hand in hand.
It has to be because I mean, the fact that nothing like this existed before is incredible. It's the manual of lenses, so everyone should have one.
Well, and especially in this sort of day and age, bad phrase, but where it's all right, where there's so much or I shouldn't even say disinformation, but misinformation about crop factor. Like I hate the crop factor conversation. I got into an argument that I actually had Duclos just solve for me about focal reducers. This guy was very adamant on YouTube that he was like, again, incredibly easy to test. And I was like, but you're wrong. I just emailed Matthew and I was like, is he right? And he was like, no. So
what did he say?
Oh, so he was saying that, like, for example, if you were to put a 50 millimeter on a focal reducer, a speed booster, that you inherit all the quote unquote look of full frame. He's like, you get shallower depth of field, you get faster lenses, you get ba 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 ba. And I was like, no, actually, you get a wider depth of field because now you're shooting a 35 or whatever. And he was just like, this is incredibly easy to test. And I was like, or
focal reducer.
Yeah. So it's nice to have something in that book that's like
proves
here.
It.
Yeah.
Right.
Prove.
You could literally throw the book at him.
Yeah. And it hurt. It's a massive book.
Yeah, don't do that actually.
Yeah. I felt bad for the FedEx guy. I was like, oh boy.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can't wait to get it.
Is there any other sort of, because there are gear people, I'm certainly one of them, but is there any other like gear that kind of gets you excited? For me, weirdly enough, the Kino Flow LED panels
Mm.
are the best things I've ever used. I've heard that like apparently Kinos, I don't know, I shouldn't say they're not doing well. I don't know anything about that, but like no one uses them that much.
Right.
And I'm trying to get people, like, I have no business doing this, but like I want people to use them because I was getting 100 TLCI.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
They're basically perfect.
Yeah. We used them on Ozark. We had this, the 2-footer, 4-foot, they're thinner ones. We used them a lot to pop in an highlight. They're like this, you know.
Yeah. The freestyle.
The long ones. Yeah. Freestyle. And we'd use them a lot, you know, we needed a little kick on the skin or an highlight or something just to kind of bring in a little bit up close. They saved our asses a bunch of times.
They're super light too.
They're great. I mean, there's so many lights that I love out there right now. But also I own a couple of Sony Venices. I have the Sony Venice 2, I have the Sony Venice. Those cameras to me have changed a lot because just of how their workflow, like the gradual NDs, the one-step NDs. So you know, go from 3 to 2.1 incrementally, which the Alexas can't do. And that's a huge time saver in itself on set, to be able to put it in Rialto mode and break off the front element so you can make it very small. And then the dual ISO is incredible. So I've been using since a year after they came out. So the last 3 or 4 years, and haven't used anything else since then. So those are great.
Why, I mean, I kind of know the answer, but why would you buy 2 Venices as opposed to renting?
Well, so that's actually a great question. You know, I've always bought gear and then rented them out to the productions that I'm on, and then also had them at rental houses when I'm not working on it.
You parked the cameras at the rental house?
I have in the past. Yeah. So I think it's actually important as a cinematographer, you're building your business, right? So, and the equipment you use frequently is part of that. So it's very helpful to always be able to have the gear that you want to use whenever you want to use it. Because a lot of times a project will be budget deficient, and you know, if you have it, you can find a way to make it work into that budget. But also it's hard to get by with just your DP rate, you know, really no matter what is coming in. So having that gear, it's supplementing that. And then if you figure out a way to, you know, pay it off per shoot, it's always a bonus. So, you know, I only just had 2 cameras recently because the Sony Venice 2 came in, but I like to have one. And then if, you know, most of those shows that I'm doing are at least 2 cameras. So it's good for the rental house to have one, and I have one. And depending on what lenses we use, I have some lenses too. So I have the soft master built soft flares.
Oh, cool.
But you know, it just my lenses really depend on the show, like what the show calls for. So it's good to have it, but I don't push it if it's not right for the show.
Well, and the camera seems these days much less important from a visual perspective than your lens choice.
Yeah. The camera. I mean, you know, the Sony Airy Red, you know, they all have great picture quality. So it's just a question of how you use the sensor. And you can get great results with any of those. So it's not like sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I have a C500 Mark II, and it's like I always feel weird because every magazine, every book, whatever, always mentions Sony Red RE.
Right. Sorry, I forgot Canon.
Well, no, but no one uses it. I'm just kind of fascinated, like why. There's certainly little things that I'm like, well, that would annoy people, but like why it never, especially with like the 5D being what, you know, quote unquote revolutionized digital cinema. No one sat on the Canon cinema cameras beyond documentary.
Right.
They're so easy to use. It's like, all right, we'll use it on a film. And they're like, oh no.
Yeah. I maybe part of that is how they're built. They're kind of built. Their build of those cameras are more geared towards owner operator use, you know, you take it out and shoot kind of things. Whereas, you know, the boxy nature and how the accessory nature of these other cameras are built more to build it out like a cinema camera. Not to say you can't do that with a Canon, but it seems like they gear their marketing more towards those kind of shoots.
Yeah.
But I've never tried it. I'd love to try them. I just haven't yet.
Yeah. It's nice, but to your point, it is like one thing I like about it is as an owner operator, it's much easier to literally, as you're saying, like you build a client, because I do a lot of like corporate stuff these days.
Yeah, it's great for that.
Perfect. It's perfect, especially because kind of to your point about owning a Venice and being able to get a rate on it, but maybe work with the budget. It's something that I've tried to explain to sort of newer DPs is like, I was talking to a guy recently and he was like, I bought a Komodo and I'm going to wait until I buy a set of Vista Primes, Tokinas, before I shoot with it, because I need to make sure it's all perfect. Like I'm not using that black magic unless people pay me nothing, basically. Ooh. And I was like, right. Yeah, but if your reel looks a certain way, because he had a good reel,
right?
People are hiring you on that. And if you don't like the budget and you show up phoning it in,
right,
no one's going to want to work with you again. So fuck whichever camera you have. It's much better to own the thing that you like. In his case, Komodo, whatever, Venice,
right,
and work that budget into it. Be like, all right, I'll give you half off to use the thing that you know you're going to do your best work on.
Yeah.
Versus going, oh, they couldn't afford it, so fuck it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Or don't take those projects.
or just bail out. But if you believe in the project and they have a low budget, you know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Gotta believe.
Yeah, definitely. Don't. We were talking a little bit off camera, but one piece of advice for everyone: if you believe in your gut,
right?
If it doesn't feel right,
yeah,
if it doesn't feel right, bail out.
Right.
You don't have to have that job.
One of the don't do what I did lessons is always starts with that. Probably trust your gut on projects. If it seems like it's bullshit, probably is.
Yeah, it's funny. What I don't know if it has something to do with I don't know what it is, but I've noticed recently more and more. We've said on this podcast a lot, like especially for film, people seem to think there's a correct answer to lighting or framing or whatever. You know, we have so many educational resources that it can seem prescriptive. You know, you have to do this. And more I'm finding that much more important to go with what feels correct.
Yeah.
As long as it feels good in the moment, generally it's correct. The second you overthink it, you're going to get in the edit and be like, oh, why didn't I just go with the first thought? Or like, why didn't I go with the second thoughts? A lot of times, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's very true. It's, there is no rules. I mean, it's just what works for the story and what works for you, and you use your instincts. And, you know, I have seen a lot of videos where it's like they're teaching the correct way to light. And of course there's learning the basics and what things do and how the lights work and how diffusion works and bounces and how, you know, how to illuminate things. But when it comes down to it, you know, you can get a tube, an overhead fluorescent tube, and that might be all you need, you know? So just go with what you can, what's within your reach, and, you know, make it work.
Hold for playing.
This Zen moment brought to you by
right. Yeah.
A lens manual.
Moment of Zen.
You should do a moment of Zen like in the middle of your podcast, actually. Just
right. Instead of an ad read.
Yeah.
I don't have any sponsors, so I could just
you do whatever the fuck you want.
Just a quiet little, all right, so we've learned a lot today, so why don't we just take a moment.
Soak it in. I think it's a crop duster. I think it sounds like a lawnmower in the air.
Yeah, it's probably some prop plane.
Yeah. I am in North Carolina, so that's likely.
Yeah. What was I going to say about it? I can hear that noise reducer in Zoom just doing overtime right now.
Make the computer blow up.
Yeah. What was I going to say about the trusting your gut thing? When you're learning lighting and composition and stuff, oftentimes because you don't have a script, I think this is a hard thing for a lot of people, is like people want to learn things sort of in a vacuum.
Right.
Know? And without the context of the script, it's hard to say like what the correct way to light. So you just end up going, I don't know, 3-point light. Like everything becomes Rembrandt,
Sure.
portrait lighting.
Yeah.
And until you have the experience of like being on set and not being able or not needing to do that sort of Rembrandt portrait lighting,
right. Yeah,
you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why it's good to learn the basics and learn, what looks beautiful, what you like. And so you can use it when you need to, or just totally curb it and do what the story calls for. And that's what film school is great for. That's what learning, doing music videos and learning on set, and just working on set and seeing how other people do it is great. But yeah, learn it all, and also watch movies and see how some of the greats do it, and that's the best way to do it. And just if you can find the BTS from your new BTS company, then find it and see how they're doing it. It rarely talks about the cinematography, unfortunately, because it's always director actor centric for the BTS a lot of the times.
Yeah,
but there's some stuff out there, and there's a lot of resources, especially the ASC has a bunch, and
absolutely,
podcasts, and this podcast is a wealth of it. So
at this point, it's we started off strong with well, first it was my my friend Johnny Durango. He's a DP. He kind of did the prototype. We didn't think about making it a podcast, really. Like we did a podcast, but it wasn't necessarily, we didn't know what it was yet. And then my first like true guest was Josh Richards, who shot Nomadland.
Oh, nice.
So that really just ramped up the cachet, I suppose. So I was able to get some really great guests, such as yourself.
He killed it. Loved it.
Oh, yeah, so good. Again, simple lighting.
Yeah, well,
wait till golden hour every day.
that's actually, his movie is a great example, because really it's just about timing when you're shooting and not shooting when the light is bad. And look what that did for his film. It's like they would shoot sunset, sunrise. They'd find the right moments, and they wouldn't shoot otherwise. Or if they did, they would go inside and shoot something inside, and it's just like one light in a trailer. And single source lighting could be beautiful. It's like it's all you need. I'm not even sure he actually even used any lights in that film. It feels like it, right? He must have.
I think he said he truly mostly just used bounce.
Right. Yeah.
And which
is great. You just have to do something like that.
Discipline.
Everyone has to be on board, not just you as the DP, but the director has to be on board with that. The producers have to be on board with that, and especially the AD, and everything has to revolve around shooting in the right light. Otherwise, that concept doesn't work, and you just end up with shit some of the time, because you're like, oh well, we had to shoot midday, mid-sun because that's what the schedule allowed. It's like, no, if you're gonna embrace these sunsets and sunrises and natural looks, you got to schedule around it. And that's actually the hardest part of making a movie or TV show, is you do not have the time to do that. And so what you find happening is that you're using more lights to make it look like there's less light, when it's not scheduled properly. So
I was going to ask about if you had any kind of influences, but we are kind of coming up on time. So I do want to, maybe we can touch on that for a second, but I do want to get into Ozark a little bit. But were there any like filmmakers or DPs coming up that you sort of gravitated to and thought, that's my look? And if so, did any of that translate to Ozark?
Right. I would actually say no. I kind of absorb, I have so many different influences in terms of styles of films and DPs, and I kind of take things from everything for what I like. And I don't have, there's so many great DPs. I don't have like 1 or 5 or 10. I learned from everything that I see that I like. So, of course, there's a lot of people doing consistent, great work, but but I think, and because of that helped me with Ozark, because I don't have one style. I'm kind of a chameleon, so I can adapt what my lighting is to the story, and I think that's why the higher ups that brought me into Ozark, that probably appealed to them. So, and I do it from a film perspective, like what does the story need? What does it tell? So, that definitely helped in lighting Ozark, because I could adapt to what's already been done, but make it my own, in a lot of ways.
One of my notes was actually, because I watched the Ruby episode. Is that her name?
Ruth.
I watched her episode sort of in the middle of the 4th season. I just jumped right into there. Right. Luckily, Netflix gave me like a full trailer. Like, nice. Here's what it was like. Here's what happened for the whole series up till now. And I was like, how did you know?
Well, it's 2 parts, because it was in 2 parts. It was part 1, which is the first 7 episodes, and then it's part 2 where I came in. I started episode 8. So I did 8, 9, and 10, and then the finale 14.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So you didn't shoot that one?
I did episode 8. Was it 8?
It was 8, 9, 10.
It was the first episode of part 2.
It must have been that then, because I had to go on, because I already made this mistake once where it was a TV show and I watched the wrong, like the DP didn't shoot that episode, so he's like, oh, that one looked great, but that wasn't me. I was like, fuck. So I watched that one, and then I picked some Ruth episode from the first season, and the look is remarkably similar. Like, you've done a great job of keeping that consistency.
Thanks.
Was there a sort of lookbook for that show? I remember when it first came out, not everyone, but I remember popular articles like arguing that it looked like, I don't know, uncorrected log or something. I was like, this show looks great. I don't know what it's green, but everything's green in the Ozark. Like, it's.
I think the degree of how from season 1 and 2 to season 3 and 4, the look changed pretty significantly in terms of the shade, the light, the lookup table, and the shade of green that was in there. Like, also the cameras changed. In season 3, it changed to Sony Venice, and they had been using the Varicam in the first 2 seasons.
Oh wow!
And Ben and Armando, who shot 3 and 2, I think Ben was also in the first season, did an incredible job. And what Ben particularly did was he made the budget. How do I put this? He made the budget. We're gonna erase that part of it out. He what Ben did in particular was he made it mandatory that negative was a priority in the budget from on the grip side. So we always have negative fill. So we always have 2 LOLs, which are these tractor crane devices that have 20 bys or 30 by negatives on them. And we base everything with sort of blocking out the sun or direct light. We kind of have this joke that there's no sunlight in Ozark. And then what that allows you to do is sort of bring in your however you want to key the characters up close or far away, but it allows you to sculpt it in a way that you couldn't do it if there was direct sun sort of hitting the characters. So that using that as our base of shooting, that allows you, it creates a certain look, but it also you to sort of do what you want, and it still will seem similar to what all the other episodes are, because we're using that as a base to create our light in a lot of ways in outdoor scenarios.
Right.
Does that answer the question? Sort of,
well, that's something interesting, because like building a look based on massive negative fill, I think is potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but like easier than trying to base a look on everything's top lit or having like a specific lighting package or a sort of prescriptive lighting setup.
Yeah, because if you're working off of the negative, you're already, to me, that's the most. I live on the dark side. I like being there. So it certainly creates a distinctive look in a way that top light wouldn't, or other lights. And it's easier if you have the tools, because a lot of times in TV you're moving so fast and you have to shoot throughout the day. what it allows you to do is actually do that, because you're taking off anything that would be harmful to the light of the characters and you're like letting you sculpt it in a way that you need to. And then Sean Kim, who started the season, and we alternated in the second part, who's an incredible DP. He built the looks that we're basing everything off of for the whole season. So I would just look at I looked at what he did before I came in, and then talk to him about it. And it's the same crew, so we would always have those discussions like, is this Ozark? Is it not Ozark? And the crew is incredible. They're there. Some of them have been on for all 4 seasons, and they're really they were really there to guide me. And if I did something too crazy, they'd be like, "That's not Ozark," and I was it's I'd back off.
That's cool though. That like you love to hear when a crew all kind of has the same vision in their head.
Oh yeah, they're incredible. So dedicated and master craftsmen, and so many great people.
Can you walk me through what? I will say something that I suppose maybe wasn't Ozark, but it was a shot that I literally paused and went like, "God damn, you won that one." Is when Ruth's in the diner.
Yes.
She's in the window.
Yeah.
Talk me through that and why they let you get away with making that the prettiest shot in the fucking show.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting because that goes back to making things your own, and Amanda Marcellus and the director and I felt, okay, this is a moment. She's sort of outside that Ozark world, and it's like a potential color she could expand. She could change her life, and she doesn't, but the option is there. And for me, the color was the best way to sort of tell that story in that scene. And yes, you're correct. I was wondering, is this going to get me fired after they see the dailies on this? But the great thing about Ozark is it's so filmmaker centric, and there's no one on set telling you, no, you can't do that. Because you've had all these discussions beforehand, and they're so encouraging to the director and to the DP, and letting you tell a story in a way from a filmmaker point of view, as opposed to a TV factory, method where you're just churning things out. So you notice that, the difference between 8 and 9 are, pretty similar in some ways, but 10 is a totally different thing. And then, at 14 is a different thing. It's, all different directors, Jason Bateman directed the finale.
Cool.
And then, Amanda directed 8 and 9, and Melissa directed 10, and they're all different, in a lot of ways. They bring their own things to it.
Also, shout out to Killer Mike.
Oh, amazing! He was great. You never know how a musician's gonna be on camera, but he felt pretty natural and killed it. So he's a super incredible, nice guy too, and inspirational.
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, he's great.
Can you walk me through kind of then what, because again, like I said off camera, but like I've had the chance to watch Ozark. I just haven't sat down and done it. But now that's why this podcast is so good, because it forces me to watch things. Then I'm like, okay, good. Yes, this is good. So it got me quick. Just that one episode, like I was like, all right, I'm in. I don't really know what's going on, but I get it. Like this all works. But for people who have seen the show, can you walk me through kind of generally how you are approaching the sort of like all the cinematography is, all the camera work is very considered, very locked off, solid moves.
Right.
But that combined with what a typical, how you are, because you're not just throwing up the big piece of neg, you've also got some light or some reflection or something going on. Walk me through kind of like a basic, make up a scene in your head, I suppose, and how you would approach it, or maybe pick one from that episode.
Sure. From the Ruth episode.
Yeah. I'm sure you got people saying you got to go because it's now 12.
No, it's all good. No worries. So let me think. Okay, so they're walking through that Killer Mike episode. Let's see, what's a scene at the end that we can talk about? I mean, we could talk about that scene itself. Well, one, we shut down early because there was gunshots outside of the
Lovely.
So we ended that day early. So there would have been more to that scene probably. But yeah, I mean, you go into it thinking, okay, where was the character before this? Where is the character gonna go to during the episode, and where is the character at the end of this? Where's their emotional state? How does it move the story forward? And then once you talk about those beats with the director, it's really how do we tell the story? Is it through the shot selection? Is it the framing? Is it the lighting? And what are we trying to say? And so that particular episode is Ruth's journey. It's really her descent into I don't want to use their word hell, but like it's she's going bottom floor, and what's going to happen? Is she going to be saved, or is it going to be too late for her at the end of this episode? And so all of the filmmaking, there's a lot of driving in that episode, we actually have an LED screen for driving stuff. We have it on stage. We pick the backgrounds beforehand, and we do it that way because it's better for TV. You can control it more. It works better with a schedule. Everyone fucking hates process trailer shots. Like it's a pain in the ass to shoot, and usually it doesn't.
You get air conditioning.
You get air conditioning. Well, not when you're sitting on the back of the trailer, but the actor does.
Yeah.
Oh, you get on stage. Yes, you're right. Air conditioning. So, but for me, like that's great if you're long lens and you're inside the car, but anything where you sort of look halfway in the car and halfway out just looks completely fake, no matter what you do. And it limits what your shots are. And she's so real, and her emotion is so real in the scene. We decided we had to shoot on process trailer because that was better for her character and for the story. And that was actually kind of the only fight we've ever had in Ozark. Not a fight really, but like they didn't want us to shoot a process trailer, for understandably, because it's a fucking pain in the ass. And it proved to be, because we lost half a day because of rain, and had to make it up in another half a day. So they're completely correct. But it was right for the story to put her on the trailer. And so that you see shots where you see the Chicago skyline, or you see the open road, that we wouldn't have been able to get if we were doing it on the LED stage, at least to me, in a way that felt real. And everything in the episode's about her raw emotion. So anything that felt phony or forced would really take the audience out of it. And we just didn't want that. She's
amazing in the episode, by the way.
Oh yeah, she's incredible. Her transformation and her downfall. I won't give anything away for people that haven't seen it.
Yeah, but, I will say the way that office scene plays out towards the end.
Oh yeah,
let's say. I loved the speed. If I'm trying to speak in code here of of how that just plays out, very simply. Right. I was like, oh, I wonder. Nope. Got it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. You're hoping this whole time she won't go there. She won't go there. Or if you're twisted and sick, you're hoping she does go there. And something happens where you're like, oh, this is going to change the rest of the series.
Yeah. So that, it was a great, the craziest trailer I could have possibly gotten for this series.
Right. Yeah. Was it a trailer for that episode, or was it?
No. I mean, that episode.
Oh, that episode.
My foray into the show.
Right. Yeah. They're all crazy in some way, but that one's definitely, it's unique in that space.
Yeah. So, kind of wrapping up that thought though, when you were saying that's not Ozark, that is Ozark. What is Ozark? When you have those conversations, what isn't Ozark? Well,
I mean, honestly, that's every person on the crew has their own opinion about what is and what isn't Ozark. But it's keeping that contrast. Ozark's a contrasty show, not necessarily feeling the need to light everything. It's characters play in and out of shadows. It's also how the light falls and colors, but then again, you see how we did it in that episode with the Killer Mike scene. People would say that's not Ozark, but we made it part of the show and made it work for the story. So it became,
so you have to, it matches really well.
Right. So you have to pick your battles and say, okay, this might not have been Ozark, but you know what? Now it is, and that's how this is going to change. So it's just taking chances. We did a little bit of color and later on too for a scene I thought called for a different episode, and then it worked there too. So it's sort of not blowing the viewer over with something totally different, but making it still feel like the same language. So we kept the contrast the same, and the down lighting, so it's not like a bright key. Like those are all Ozark things that we do, and put it into that.
I noticed in the house, the family's kind of having like an argument. It feels like it's literally just, there's no lights in the house, and it just feels like sunlight coming through some glass doors or something.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you guys play interiors a lot of the time? Is just like only natural light and just let it ride? Or are you putting a lot of fixtures out there?
Usually only do fixtures in the night stuff. So yeah, a lot of the times it's sunlight coming through the windows and playing it that way for the daytime scenes. Because you can have a big soft source and they can play in that space and still get a lot of negative. So that was definitely a theme of doing daytime scenes in the house. So yeah.
Talk to me about your how the colorist. You said you switched LUTs. Like, what was that sort of difference? But B, how much work is being done in the grade? Is it just a tint thing, or is it is there more? That kind of.
Yeah. So Sean had developed what's called a show LUT, 2 show LUTs that during prep when he first started. And that was that's what we would view everything as. So Mexico had this warmer show LUT, and then the rest of the Ozark world had a more greener bluish Ozark LUT. But it actually did change quite a bit in the color correction. Tim Stepan is the colorist from Company 3, and he's incredible, and he's been doing it since the first season. So he's evolved the look the whole way. And he was great. He's an incredible colorist. Like he would find things and kind of massage the colors and add life to it in a way that it didn't have when we were on set. Because you can play with the colors and pop them out more in the color correction suite. So that's great going in there and seeing it come to life in a lot of ways. It really evolved. Yeah. Because they're not completely different. It's just stages.
Well, and with a show LUT, there's only so much. Because something that I've talked about a lot on this podcast is how I feel like cinematography these days firmly has one foot in post. Like you're never really getting the exact look on set, and the show LUT will show you. I feel like everyone pretty much gets 90% of the way there, because in the grade you're gonna all right, we can window that. That's not, we can knock that down. That won't matter. It's a time saver in that way.
Correct.
Or just making it look pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not pretty.
Ugly is good too.
Yeah. Is there anything that you learned shooting this show that maybe is applicable to the rest of your career, so is going forward, so to speak?
Oh yeah, I might be too close to it to really put a name on it, but
sure.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing something for 5 months where you're intensely in it, you're going to learn some lessons of what to do and what to not to do. So I'm sure next year, if I teach a class again in AFI, it'll be a big part of what not to do and maybe a couple to do's. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. Could I put a name or a finger on any of it? I don't think I could right now. I think I'm too close to it. Sometimes it takes a minute to figure all that out. So
trust me, I process things slow.
Right. Yeah,
it's a few months later, and I'm like, oh, that's what they were trying to tell me.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's usually the second time I've made the mistake.
Right.
No, that's fine. We'll
turn that off. Okay, that worked.
That's fine. I have kept you a little longer than I should have, but we'll have you back on, next year sometime. Maybe we can answer that question and talk about whatever it is or this film, I guess, whatever film you're filming.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I would love that.
But the way that we end every podcast is with the same 2 questions.
Sure.
The first one we've kind of gone over a little bit, but is there any sort of thing you've read or a piece of advice that you were given that has stuck with you over the years? It doesn't have to be film centric, and it doesn't have to be the piece of advice, but maybe just something that kind of comes up.
Sure. I mean, I don't know who I learned it from, or it's more just a life pursuit lesson is on mindfulness. And if you don't have your mind and your body right, how are you going to have your life and your work right? So whatever that means for each individual, whether it's meditation, working out, yoga, etc., reading, philosophy, it's really figuring out what that works for you and how to really get everything correct inside your head. And that will translate once you can figure that out in some way, because it's a lifelong pursuit, how to apply that to your work life too.
I've found
that's a whole nother topic.
We could go for hours on that. That was a huge lesson for me, because I was a very, let's say, energetic person.
Right.
And what's funny is everyone I've spoke to, I have like friends that are a bit younger than me, and I'll be like, when you turn 27, something changes and you're going to start thinking that the random shit I've talked about needing like literally a meditation day or whatever, like not even a day to myself, just a day of silence or whatever, or it's, taking those moments. I'm like, you're going to want that too. And they're like, no, I'm just up. It's like, no, trust me.
Right.
Get it. Just you don't need the energy. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, it's
true.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast just on that. Getting the mind right. But second question, if kind of geared towards films, but we'll make it work for television. If let's say Ozark as a film was in a double feature, what would the other feature be?
Ooh, man. Can I pick a genre and the multiple features?
Sure. Well, yeah, because this is the thing. Like, it can be complementary, it can be contrasting, it can be an idea.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, to me, like 70s noir kind of gritty films come to mind, like Eddie Coyle, Friends of Eddie Coyle, and Thief, Michael Mann, and films in that era, this sort of gritty, contrasty, crazy colored, but green, because that's, they're shooting with a lot of fluorescence. That's really what comes to mind. So I would put something in those veins like that. What's the Ben, there was another film that was popping in my head, but I can't remember. I'm terrible with names of films, but
me too.
But something in that genre, I think, just grittiness and raw in some ways. So
for sure.
Yeah.
You're actually like the second or third person to recommend Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's cinematically, it's not a masterpiece, but there's just something about it that's just, really appealing. And I think it's the colors and the characters and the way the camera moves, and it's just I love that movie.
Cool. Secretly, what I do is I get all these suggestions, and then I immediately just go buy the Blu-ray.
Good.
I've got a great collection now of DP approved films.
Ben Gazzara. That's what I was. Ben Gazzara, and he plays he runs a strip tease. I'll text it to you.
I can ask the internet.
Yeah, ask the internet.
There needs to be, IMDb needs a 7 Degrees.
They really do.
Feature.
Oh, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's annoying. That was right at the top.
Right.
And I ignored it.
Right. Killing of a Chinese Bookie, in that vein.
Yeah, if they made a 7 Degrees feature, you could be like this actor and this DP, and it just gave you a list or whatever. Right. That'd be very useful. But IMDb is not an academic website.
No,
they make finding. I pass by the cast and crew button all the time. It used to be so easy to find,
right,
for any given movie, and now it's here's the top 2 actors and a shit ton of ads.
Right. Yeah, because anything, they don't give a shit about the cast and crew. They don't give about the crew. It's just it's about other things.
Yeah, Brad Pitt's face.
Right, exactly.
We all like looking at, but come on.
Great face.
Great. One of the best faces.
Great face.
Did you see The Lost City?
No, I did not. Is he kind of play? Is he kind of comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a like a romantic comedy, but they earn their dorkiness. Nice. Like it's I went in thinking like, oh, good. Because I got brought to it. My sister was like, it's good. And then my girlfriend was like, I want to see it. And I was like, okay. And then I went and saw it. I was like, actually, that's pretty good. But Brad Pitt is in it, and I won't ruin it for you because I guess it's already on like Paramount or HBO or one of it's already on the streamer.
Gotcha.
But he has a fun. His part's fun.
Nice. I'll check it out.
If you need a goofy romantic, comedy type day, there you go.
I might. We're on splits this week, so I might need something at 4 a.m. to put me to bed.
Perfect. Thanks for spending the time with me, man. That was a lot of fun, and awesome. I'd love to have you back on next time you have something to talk about, or if you just want to come hang out. That's that offer's always open.
I'd love that. Thanks, Kenny.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.